Hello, I'm Jim Sal for Sal Cues, and today I'm going to show you my taper lathe, how I set it up, and how I operate it. So let's get started. There's three elements of the system. Is the basic lathe, you have the cutter attached to the carriage, and you have the computer, the software, and the program. So, with the basic lathe, you just have a headstock, tailstock motor, basically just to turn the stock. That's all you need. As far as the cutter on the carriage, I use a spindle motor that's water cooled. The reason why I use a water cooled spindle motor is because it allows you to get the high RPMs that's necessary to really make fine cuts. Similar, if not better, than a router, but a lot quieter than a router. It's very simple. I just put a pump in a drywall bucket and run two tubes to it, and it cools the motor off. Really doesn't get that hot running on the lathe. It's probably for much larger industrial uses, larger CNC machines. Anyway, this is the controller for it, which sends the signal to the motor. Then I have the computer. Let's start that. And we're going to set up the program in the software and get it ready to run, and then I'll turn these two things on, and then we'll make a pass. So the first thing I do is I click on Mac 3 taper, and Mac 3 loader, which is the software that I use, Mac 3. The CNC software is an older program, so it works on older systems. I have Windows 7. 16 bits. So it won't work on it won't work on the 32-bit, it won't work on Windows 10. It also won't work if you have security, and if you're connected to the internet, it'll play havoc, all kinds of things will happen. And it's very glitch prone, so it's best to have a bare bones computer designated just for it. And that's what I have. And I'm able to stay afloat with that. So anyway, I'm going to click on Mac 3 taper, which is the software or the program that I use for the software. That's going to bring me to a screen where I have to click on this flashing reset button and click on auto. It'll bring me to the interface where I can load my G codes, and I'll bring them up in a second and show you and explain them to you. That will operate the two stepper motors that's going to move the carriage. So what I do is click on load, and the G codes come up in the menu, and I have three G codes in the butts, with a butt and a forearm. We're going to just the butt for practical purposes right now, but I like to call it a forearm and a butt. But and then we have three shafts. We have the ability to take off 5 thousandths, 10 thousandths, or 20 thousandths. And that's basically all I can do on here, because that's what I have on my program. So today we're going to take off, I'm pretty much down to almost my final taper on this already. So I'll make several passes of 20 thousandths, and then I'll come down to about 10, and then maybe a couple passes on 5 until I get where I want to be. So at this point, I'm going to click on butt 10 thousandths, open it up, and then I have to zero it out, and zero out the X and the Z, which is the X and the Z stepper motors, to let them know, to let the computer know that we are in the starting starting position. So when the program starts, it's going to run from here and then continue a certain distance down the lathe, stop, and then return. So I got that Z code, the G codes loaded. I have it zeroed out. Now I have to click cycle, and that brings up the program, that particular program, the G code and the program that we want, and we're ready to start. I just have to hit click and cycle start, turn my command box on, which generates the signals to the stepper motors. One of the motors will bring the carriage with the cutter down parallel to the lathe. The other one will bring it on an angle, which will fabricate the taper that we're looking for. So I got the computer all set up, ready to go. With one click, it's going to start. So I want to get my lathe running. Flip a switch and get that going. And I want to start. Turn the command box on for the spindle cutter, and the pump will go on at the same time. I have it all on one power switch. I have a pump and a drywall bucket on the bottom of the table, which these tubes are attached to. That pumps the water in the around the casing. So now this is on. I'll hit run, and then I'll crank it up to about 30, 32, 3300. It'll go up to 4,000. I use 4,000 at the end of my passes, maybe the last two, and it'll make a finer cut. It'll also create a little dust too because of that. That's when I'll put the dust collector on. I won't put that on now for all practical purposes. I'll just add to the noise for this video. So we'll turn this up. Ready to go. We got the lathe is up and running. The spindle motor is cranking, the cutter. So all I have to do is click on cycle start. It's going to come in 10,000 and start cutting. Now I have another lathe that I could taper on, that I had tapered on before I got this set up. The lathe is a manual lathe, it's not computer generated like this. This, if I tell it to take 5 thousandths off, and I measure it with the micrometer, I know it's going to take 5 thousandths off. Or if I tell it to take 10 thousandths off, it's going to take 10 thousandths off, or 20 thousandths. That lathe is a hit and miss. It's a crapshoot. It's got knobs. You have to adjust it with a knob. You turn the knob, basically, you have to get a feel for it. And after you make a pass, you have to measure it and see what you took off because you don't know. It's very easy to remove more material than you would like with that, and I've done that. That's why I set this up for my tapers. I'm very particular on my measurements. I want my joints to be 850. Sometimes I'll make a smaller joint, but typically I like to stay around 850. So I will bring this down to a little more than 850, just so I can sand it down to the exact measurement that I want. Very particular like that, especially like with tips. If someone wants a 12 millimeter tip, I'm going to give them a 12 millimeter tip. If they want a 12.5, I'm going to give them a 12.5, not a 12.37 or a 12.64 like you get from some of these larger manufacturers. You ask for a tip and it ends up being 11.85. Well, that's not what you asked for. Well, it's just a little different. It's close, but from a 12 to a 13 is close. So anyway, that's my pet peeve. I like to be exact. You want a 13 millimeter, I'm going to give you a 13 millimeter on the nose, okay? It's a little painstaking to do that, and it's very easy. I can understand why they do that, because it's very easy to sand. You can sand it down to just under what you're trying to get if you're not careful. You got to be very careful doing that, which I am. So anyway, the other lathe, I don't use it for tapers anymore, and I'll have another video just on that. I just use that for making my rounds, to put my rings or whatever I'm just going to do to pre-taper. I start off with 1 3/8 by 1 3/8 square stock, whether it's black walnut, cherry, oak, mahogany, or whatever I'm using. Then I'll put it in this other lathe, and I'll just do a round, symmetrical round. Do 1365 and no larger. Be a little smaller, no larger. It won't fit in my metal lathe that I use to do the work on prior to the taper. But again, I'll have another video just on that. I have 3 other lathes. I have that lathe, I have a metal lathe, and I have a sanding station with another lathe, similar to this lathe, a little different motor setup. And I'll have videos on each one of those. I'll have several videos on the metal lathe that I modified to make a pool cue lathe out of it. We'll do joints. We'll do the unilock. I like the unilock, and another one that's quick connect. And my ring, my butt, show you how to do the butt and the tips and all that stuff. So I have many videos. So right now, this is going to come to the end, come off the material, and finish cutting. At that point, I'm going to turn off the lathe, and we're there right now. I'm going to stop it from rotating, then I'm going to turn the spindle motor all the way down and stop the cutter completely. So, I don't know if you can see it, but it's got a really beautiful burl. This is black walnut, and that's red oak. Well, the carriage is coming back to the original starting point. Give me the opportunity to measure this and see where I'm at, so I know how much to take off in the next pass. So I'm at 897. I'm getting there. I'm below 9. I did another 10. It's the second 10 that I did, and I'm below 9. And this is exactly what I'm talking about. At this point, I'm going to do 5, take 5 thousandths off at a time until I get close enough to that 850 where I think that the rest I can take off with sanding. And when I sand, I start off with, well, that's going to be in another video. This is going to come back to the original position, and it's going to stop and set up right where we start again. All I have to do is go into the computer, go into the software, click on this arrow, go over to load, and bring up a G code and select whether I want to take another 5 thousandths, 10 thousandths, or 20 thousandths off, and click start, and of course start up the lathe motor again, and just crank up the cutter wheel, and I'm ready to make another pass. So that's pretty much everything right there. We'll have other videos on the other machines, but until then, arrivederci.